Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists. The radio waves were clamoring last week. They were looking for their favorite co-host here on the Independent Artist Podcast, and the prodigal son has returned. Welcome back, Will Armstrong.
Kill the calf and draw the family around. Were they, though? I think it was one of the more popular episodes that we've had, is me not being on there. I'm not sure you're really missing anything.
I missed you. I missed you a ton, man, and it's really good to see your face and kind of catch up here. We're gonna spend the whole episode just talking biz.
Oh, boy. Oh, God. All right, we'll give it a go. Let's see what we've got to say. I really did enjoy your talk with Lisa. You know, there was nothing I really wanted to jump in and say. I just wanted to sit back and listen. So thank you very much for Lisa. I think you found your co-host if I ever duck out the door, because she was great.
She was great. It was a nice, natural conversation, and she shared some issues that I thought were just really great about being a mother and incorporating all of that in a way that we haven't really talked about much throughout the last couple of years. So it was a really good one.
It was an important talk, and I really appreciate her being so candid and open and funny and kind and great with our listeners. So thank you to Lisa and to you. So on to further business. Yeah, sure. I've been on the road. What do you got to say about that?
For a frickin' month? I mean, what does that do to somebody to be on the road for a month? How did you handle that?
I don't know. It made me feel like an idiot.
You're like, I remember in years past around this time, you were like, you know, I kind of feel a little FOMO. I feel like I want to get out there. I don't want to be stuck in my studio. And did you have a couple moments where you're like, I wish I was back in my studio right now?
Yeah, give me 15 minutes on the road. And I was thinking, I don't know, it was fine. Looking at the trip to Miami from here, the first 2 days actually were completely fine.
Yep.
And I went a little further. I figured I could do 3 9-hour days from here.
Okay.
And still have my wits about me and not get blood clots in my leg. I don't know. But what happened was that the first day I did a 9-hour day, and I slept really well, which is unusual. And I got up, felt great, and did 12 the next day.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, this will be great. I can actually go relax in Miami for a couple hours before I have to pick up my wife, and she flew in.
Right.
You know, saving money on the dog sitter, and I can pee in the trucker's friend, and we're all good to go.
Good.
Make better timing.
So you were the guy.
Nobody's doing that.
She needed to hire a guy, and she hired a guy. That would be you.
Oh yeah, I got a guy. She's got a guy, and I need a guy. But got to Florida, and it was just log jammed. And got a text from Sharon Spiller, and she was like, "Don't take the Florida Turnpike." I'm like, well, don't take the Florida Turnpike. How the hell am I going to go?
Right.
And I look at the map. I'm like,
by ferry?
Oh, yeah. Don't take 75. I see on social media. Somebody else is like, don't take 95.
Well, those are the two.
Those are the three, right?
Right, and then
you
the
get
Turnpike.
70, yeah, the 75 to the Turnpike to 95, and it's like, well, you know, it's not chock full of north-south highways. Those are the ones.
Yeah.
So I just ate it for 14 hours. Drove 14 hours of traffic that should have taken 6.5 to 7. So
that is Florida for you. I mean, I just saw on the news a couple weeks ago that a small plane landed or crashed on 75, which shut the whole state down, practically, people getting up and down there. So yeah, I mean, when one of those highways is blocked, no one's going anywhere.
Yeah, you're screwed. There's nothing. It was 15 miles an hour on the Turnpike, if you're lucky.
So what everybody wants to know, Will, first show of the year.
Yeah.
Was it a burner?
No, it wasn't. It was great.
Oh, good.
It was a tough weekend. We lost one full day to rain.
The weather was not cooperating, was it?
No, and I mean, it was rain like you don't see unless it's a hurricane. I mean, they got 2 inches of rain in a matter of hours. And
you were kind enough to text me from the road. I saw by the porta potties, they were underwater, I believe.
Do you know Debo Grover? She took a little duck out to the porta-john and was camped out in the porta-john while the heavens really opened up. She's like, well, I'll just sit this out here for a minute. And she sat it out until the water started to rise, and then she couldn't get the door open of the porta-john.
You're
So, no, a little flash flood. So she waited till it filled up to the top, and then she swam out. No. She's fine. She's fine. Yeah, not great. Not super fun.
I hear there was a celebrity in the midst of that one, though. Did Jeff Bezos make an appearance in your booth?
No, fuck that guy. Yeah. No, he didn't come by. I didn't see any 4-foot-tall billionaires.
What would you say to him anyway? You'd say, hey, I keep deleting your app from my phone.
I'd say, yes, sir. You have a shiny credit card. But he didn't come by. No, I'd have taken his money. He just
Absolutely
takes enough of ours.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, did you hear anything else? Did you hear anything about that? He must have come in a different part of the show.
Honestly, I that was one of the things I'd heard, and that was pretty much about it, other than what you had sent me about the weather. I'm really sick of looking at social media, so I just have been trying to keep my nose out of it.
Attaboy.
That's right. So it's been a good thing for my mental health.
Cool.
And this might be what was the tipping point for me, because the thing is, when you're on Facebook too much and following your friends and liking their stuff, that you're a little too much into Facebook when Facebook says, will you accept a top fan badge?
Ugh.
That's humiliating.
Yeah.
Like, really, do I want Will Armstrong to know that I am his top fan?
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you a real badge. I'll make you a little painted one. Put it on your sash, your Boy Scout sash.
That's happened to me a number of times. I have a lot of friends. I like their stuff, and then I'm like, top fan. Hashtag stalker.
Yeah. Hey, I'll say one more thing about Coconut Grove.
Yeah, bring it.
The way they did the breakdown with all of those people on one street.
Yeah.
Open up the intersections and let the artists just deal with it themselves.
We know best, right?
Hell yeah. 3 hours typically takes me to break down the 3 booths, and I was out in 2. Perfect. I had a double, and then my wife had a single.
Right.
Got them all broken down and put back into the rental van and out of there in 2 hours. That was very smooth. Even dealing with Kettle Corn Man. Kettle Corn Man was even cool. So way to go, Kettle Corn Man. You get an attaboy too. I'm giving out
another attaboy.
Hell yeah, I'm giving out attaboys. That guy, heck yeah, that guy was kind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll tell you what though, I got fat on empanadas. The empanada booth was across.
Perfect.
They had like
breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That's really good. Hell yeah, get me some spinach and cheese and mushrooms and so right. You weren't missing it too bad, I'm sure, if you're not checking out social media every 15 minutes.
No, but this was kind of interesting. We've been trying to keep busy with some fun stuff like going to movies and stuff like that, but it's still pretty much just feeling kind of trapped.
Mm-hmm.
And Renee could tell that I was pretty much in the doldrums with a pretty bad mood. And one Friday night, she comes downstairs. We're getting ready to go off on date night to a movie. And she says, I've got a plan. This is going to fix things. We're driving to Chicago in the morning. And I looked at her and I turned into this like total wet blanket. No. We can't do that. I've got my leg. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that. She says, think about it. So we go off to the movie Anatomy of a Fall.
Okay.
You know anything about that one?
No.
The premise of the movie is the husband falls out a window and dies. Was up for Best Picture. Point of the whole movie is you don't know if the wife killed him.
Oh, yeah.
Or if he committed suicide.
Yeah. So
okay.
Is that you were worried that Renee was going to kill you, so you decided to go to Chicago?
I'm watching the thing thinking, this is a sign. I have got to get with the program. I don't want to end up jumping out a window because I am a big baby or get killed by my spouse because I'm a big downer. So we get out of the movie and I turn to her. I go, let's do it. So we got up in the morning. We knew that the Picasso exhibit was going on at the Chicago Art Institute, 50 years after his cool. death. And we're like, that's the one thing we're going to do. And I'm figuring the rest out on my phone on our way there. Booked the hotel on the way, planned our tickets to a comedy show, saw Fortune Feimster,
awesome.
Blue Man Group. We just had a fucking blast. It was exactly what I needed because when we got back the next day, I got my boot off, got in the studio, and I've been blowing glass every single freaking day for 8 days in a row. I'm back, man.
Very
I'm
cool.
back, baby.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Way to go, Renee.
So I've got a renewed energy. So that whole trip gave me just the shot in the arm that I needed. And it feels great to be back doing our work, planning our future, planning the next show. And so, yeah. So this is not going to be an episode about, oh, woe is me. This
Thank
is
Christ.
a whole turnaround.
Very good. It cracks me up, though. I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, you had this really optimistic, like, amazing trip. And my wife and I actually had a couple of days off after La Quinta because I did Coconut Grove into the California show. And took a couple of days off, and honestly needed to lick my wounds on that one. Had a tough one, but left La Quinta and took a couple of days and did Joshua Tree. And my wife had rented this amazing,
nice,
just super modern. I mean, like modernism, modern. Just no TV. Really clean lines, just like a little, like kind of bungalow out in the middle of the desert. It was absolutely amazing. And you're going out there, you're seeing comedy shows and Picasso. And so here's the big one for me.
Okay.
So a quick music lesson just to catch everybody up. Graham Parsons was a member of the Byrds. And if you're a fan of the Byrds, their Sweetheart of the Rodeo album is all him. That's getting back into more of a country kind of flavor, country folk. And then he became like best friends with Keith Richards, and he kept up with Keith.
You know that guy, right?
Oh,
you know Keith Richards is,
Sure.
Okay.
And he tried to keep up with Keith, and he did a lot of heroin, and he did a lot of coke, and he did a lot of weed. And he's an amazing singer-songwriter. He loved going to Joshua Tree, and he would sit there, and he was sitting there with friends, and they've been up for several days in a row, and they're out there, and he's like, if I ever die, I want my ashes scattered at Joshua Tree. And that week, he happened to pass away in the Joshua Tree Inn, and his parents were loaded. They were just Orange Grove money down in Waycross, Georgia, in New Orleans, had a big, huge mansion in New Orleans that's still owned by the Parsons family. Okay. They hate his hippie friends, drug addict friends, and they are like, we are not doing anything that they want. We're taking his body, we're taking our son home, and we're giving him a true formal funeral in New Orleans.
Okay.
Well, his friends steal the body. They drive it out to Joshua Tree. They take it to his favorite spot at the base of his spot, and they burn the corpse right there. And they're being pursued by the police, and the police catch them. They get called in. They arrest these guys. They put the body out. They drag the burnout corpse back, and they have the funeral. But they did manage to burn half of Graham Parsons' body.
So his wishes were fulfilled, partially.
At least half of them. Yeah, half of them. And so I'm walking around with my wife, and we're walking around, and we find the spot, and they keep scrubbing the graffiti off of it, and it's not particularly easy to find. I was like, I just knew kind of where it was, and all of a sudden we just found it, and we knew where it was. So that's our version. Nice. That's how we find a little rest, just to find where people burn our favorite rock stars.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
In effigy. So yeah, it was a pretty magical trip.
Wow. Well, the thing I found super interesting about Chicago is how often are we able to like go to a city in just like a regular car? There's a lot of times you go to Chicago and we're in this big vehicle, artist vehicle that you can't park anywhere. And it's like, well, we can't do anything because we're traveling with this big vehicle. But I mean, it was awesome to pull into a parking ramp and get out and Uber anywhere we want to go. And it's like,
right.
Like a normal person, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. That's kind of the benefit of doing the truck and trailer route too. Mm-hmm. A lot of people do. You just unhitch and you get to save your parking place for the whole weekend.
Well, that's good on those folks. I'm never going back to a trailer. I'm done. I hate trailers. I'm sick of them. I'm happy.
All right. Yeah, maybe I'll go back just to spite you. I'll be trailer guy. Well, we're talking about trucks and trailers and acting like a regular person, but you got to make sure you can drive it first.
Sure.
You don't want to be the guy that walks into pulls into the show and then it's all like oh no, here comes Jimmy. He doesn't know how to drive his trailer, and it's all this like. Everybody has to chip in, and we're all looking to see. I'm like, you gotta know how to drive that. That's just kind of embarrassing.
I hate to admit, but my first time out with a trailer at Old Town, and Old Town's not an easy one to narrow streets. There's no room for forgiveness there. And oh man, I was so bad at driving that thing and trying to maneuver it. So as you describe it, I was that guy.
Yeah, I've probably been that guy too. But I mean, it's like you have to be willing to do what it takes, right? And sometimes what it takes is, you screwed it up and you got to take a lap, And it's like, well, I can't go backwards. I'm going forwards. I'm going to take a lap. I'm not going to like, hey, can you move? I mean, we're all willing to work with each other, but
when you have to slide your entire tent over 8 feet so that the trailer can come by, then it's a problem.
Well, there's the same thing. It's just common sense. You don't pull into a busy street if you don't know how to drive your vehicle. You don't put your awning up if you're the first person to set up and then act exasperated. We're like, oh, you're going to make me take my awning down? We're like, yeah, Jimmy. Yes. You got to take I don't know why Jimmy's taking the brunt, but sorry, Jimmy.
Today it's Jimmy.
Yeah, it's Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy, get your awning down. We can't. Oh, boy. Don't be Jimmy.
So while we were in Chicago, we watched one of the Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm shows. And it was kind of this funny scene. I can't remember all the details, but it had something to do with tipping the housekeeper. And he left a tip for the housekeeper because she was kind of like not that pleased with him. And he goes to leave, shuts the door, the tip flies up in the air and into the toilet. So that happened. And then I see a post on social media, which I never look at, from Sharon Spiller about tipping the housekeepers. Be sure to tip the housekeepers. And I'm thinking, I'm seeing this all at the same time, that these two things. It's like, who do you tip nowadays?
Well, let's analyze that a little bit.
Okay.
She didn't just tip the housekeeping because everybody tips them, right? I don't know if everybody does, but a lot of people tip them. You go and you get a couple bucks and you're like, hey, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And you give them a couple bucks. Sharon throws down a 10.
She's a big spender.
Yeah, 10. Look, making us all look bad. Gloat book. That's what it was.
That was what it was. She took a photo and then she secretly swapped it out for a couple of ones.
I tipped 100. I tipped more than the room. Wow. No, I didn't. That was a setup.
Yeah.
No, but bless her heart for tipping $10. They deserve that sawbuck. They work hard. They do.
Yeah.
They do work hard. And you know who I think ought to pay them for working hard?
Who?
Their employer. That's who ought to pay these people. I mean, I'm all for tipping and I tip, but Douglas, I just have a couple of questions for you. There's just a couple of last minute questions.
Okay.
Yeah, here. You got 25% in the center. It's like the lowest you can tip is 20 now. Like, would you just pour some dark water in a cup?
You'd like a venti Americano? Okay, here's your slip. A tip? A tip for taking my order? I mean, I don't know. I'm confused. I don't know. Do you tip for takeout? If you show up and pick it up? Yes. Yeah,
you're supposed to.
Of course, I always do.
I always do too. It is annoying, you know? Or how about Denver or some of the? Did you see this in Chicago? Because they do that.
Oh, what?
Where you look on your slip and it's like your receipt for your restaurant, and they've got like I don't even know what they call it, but like some other kind of fee, and that's to tip the back of the house.
Oh, like a service charge. They'll have a service charge, but that's still unclear if it's a gratuity.
Well, it's going to the back of the house. And pay your own goddamn employees.
Right.
Pay your own people. That's what a salary is, right?
I think they're going to do that now that they heard us say that on the podcast. Yeah. It's all
the 1,000 people that out there listening here. Hi. No, I don't know that anybody's going to agree with me. They're probably like, God, what a cheap.
You're already throwing $100 bills at people left and right as you're walking down the street, man.
Definitely.
You're loaded. I
can't even remember to cash the check you just sent me.
That's okay. I canceled it.
It's not being rich. It's just it's being careless.
Oh, okay.
That's yeah.
We'll be right back.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
So, Will, it's that time of year again when we all need to start getting stuff ready for taxes.
Thanks for that, Douglas. I appreciate that. We all do, quite literally. I did get an email recently from Zap. They were talking about doing line items and keeping everything together in one place.
Yeah, that's right. I tried it out for myself. So when I was logged into Zap, I went to my profile, and one of the options further down the page is to download your transaction history.
Amazing. That's after you've proven to them that you're not a robot by correctly identify the tractor before you play that lovely game.
So once you've identified that you're an actual human, it's super easy just to select your date range, and then it will create a report of all your purchases so you can hand off those booth fees and application fees directly to your accountant.
Hey, this week we've got a big fat call to entry, folks. We've got Peoria Art Guild Fine Art Fair. Douglas, tell us a little something about this show.
Well, this is quite the established show. The Peoria Art Guild has been around for a long time. It's one of the oldest art guilds in the country, and this is the 62nd anniversary for this show.
Wow. Okay, older than me. It is the Peoria Art Guild's major fundraising event of the year, so all proceeds benefit the Art Guild's community outreach and programming, besides your own pockets. I mean, that's what you care about, right, folks?
And there were some cool features that they added last year to attract the right kind of buyers who buy art. The first one was they incorporated a local winery, and they have a wine tasting that happens at the event.
That always brings the people out, as well as partnering with the local jazz festival into the fair. So that's bringing more folks, making it a big party atmosphere, as well as an art event.
And the other thing about this is they really take care of their artists. They have more volunteers than I've ever seen at an art show, and they're giving you breaks and bringing you snacks, and it's really a show that wants to take care of the artists.
I got Burgess Meredith in the corner. He's giving me a back rub. I've got a hot towel. He's wiping the blood off my face, giving me a Dorito. Get back out there and sell some art, Rocky. You got it. Have at it, folks. The applications are going to be due soon. Log on to his application and check that one out for more details.
The application deadline is June 2nd. The show is September 28th and 29th in beautiful Peoria, Illinois at the Riverfront Festival Park.
I had to be careful, Douglas. I just had to get coffee before we recorded again here, and I just stepped over to the coffee shop wearing my favorite Leah Evans hat. She's an artist, does quilting work and does some really amazing work with like old maps and things with her quilting patterns.
Well, that's pretty cool.
It is. It's
Looks
a
awesome.
Great cap, but you got to be careful where you wear a red cap.
Yeah, I hear you on that
These
one.
days.
I had my own experience with a red Chicago hat that I was wearing. You know, have you ever had those dreams where you suddenly feel like you're completely naked in public?
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like something like, oh my God, I'm wearing this.
Yeah, that was my my dad he wore his Davidson college hat. He was cutting the grass. He's like, "Do you like my MAGA hat?" And I was like, "Dad, don't even say that out loud. It's not driven out of the neighborhood." So yeah, it's funny. It's like I am, I'm tall, which is helpful when I want to hide my bald spot. But if I'm wearing a red cap and you only see the bill, you're like, is this
right?
Just be careful.
Your first reaction, yeah.
I don't mean to get political, folks. I'm sure we have listeners on the left and right sides of the aisle, but some things I can't abide.
We can't deny the fact that a red hat elicits a response. We'll leave it at that.
How about
right?
that? All right, sure.
We'll leave it at that. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Where do we got?
Moving
what else do we have
on.
here?
So before I got back from Chicago and before we got right back into the studio and getting everything going, I mentioned this earlier in the run here this year that I was going to require some studio repairs, the things that you don't usually have to worry about as a painter who can paint wherever he goes in a hotel room if he wants.
I had to get some new paper towels. So
oh my God,
there,
big baby. Was your pinky out when you got those paper towels?
Roll. Had to put it under my arm, get the keys out of my pocket. So, what happened? What do you got?
Fixed the old glass blowing furnace, and this never happens. I flipped it on, and it worked.
Wow.
And I was like, how did that turn out easy? I mean, that was like a 15 or 20 minutes, maybe a half hour worth of work, and there you go. I'm like, okay, it was meant to be. I'm meant to get back to work, and damn, it feels good. So anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. It does feel good. You're in there making new stuff.
If you remember last year at this time, you were the best friend a person could ask for, helping me at my first show, setting up, tearing down, all that good stuff.
I don't think I listened to that episode.
Yeah. Well, this was a year ago in that park. We did that show, and man, I'm going to be so strong in a month. I am ready to go. So
awesome. That's
Yep.
fantastic.
yeah. I mean, it's not totally perfect, but yeah, I'll be like setting up in a boot and stuff, but it's a totally different situation than before. So it really does a wonder on motivation and being happy to work and happy to make new stuff. And there's like a ton of shit that we're kind of like reinventing in a way. It's almost like we feel like this is a starting point for the next chapter of our career.
I'm going to saw my foot off. See what it does for me.
There you go. See what it does.
Saw your feet off, people. It'll give you a whole new outlook.
Totally.
That's fantastic. No, that's really great. Yeah, I'm really happy for you, and I'm happy for Renee. I almost wondered if the doctor did it better this time. He's like, well, I did one, just a year ago. I'm getting better at this.
I could go into the specifics of why I think this is better, but that would be the most boring conversation on this podcast. So we'll just leave it at, I'm grateful it's going well.
All right.
So,
All right. Very good.
But when it comes to resets, like, kind of starting a new season, kind of going at a new year at things, I mean, did you do anything like that, kind of getting ready for this year?
No.
Just kind of...
just got back. I never really stopped. I just kept working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was bizarre to take that long of a break from work. We're going to actually plan to set up our booth and get a new booth shot and put new work in it and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's always the most tedious thing this time of the year. It's like, when can you reshoot your booth shot?
Ugh.
Do you take yours at the show or do you set it up and do it at home?
The way I shoot my booth every year is I take the zap image of my booth and where it said 23, I take that and then I take the 2-3 off of it and I resave it with a 2-4 on it.
Smart guy.
No, I don't know. I shoot it in the yard and do the whole thing. I mean, it's a freaking nightmare. I hate it.
It's one of those things where before we get out on the road and we start selling stuff and we feel like we're behind the 8 ball, I'm not going to be setting it up in July in our yard for sure.
Yeah.
So it's got to happen before we go.
I was just talking to an artist that I actually met through Instagram. He sent me a message and said something about the show. And he was talking about having a professionally made booth shot versus what his booth actually looks like. He's like, I can't even use it.
Yeah.
It just looked like one of those Instagram filters where it takes all my wrinkles away and makes me look pretty. And
adds a little eyeliner and big eyelashes and all that
Disney
good stuff.
eyes and bigger boobies. So it just didn't look good.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand why people do it, but that whole paying somebody to shoot your booth and then they homogenize it. I mean, I like to see what the booth actually looks like. You don't need to have your whole tent in there and your whole whatever, but I don't like talking about booth shots. Anyway, I'm sorry you have to do one. Are you got to wait till the snow melts or it's like 60 degrees up there because the earth is on fire?
You know what? It's 70 degrees and I've been on my bike this week. So it is unbelievably seasonably warm and just gorgeous. Next week, when it's back in the 40s, we're going to be like, wait a minute. I thought it was spring.
Well, I mean, that is kind of a weird thing because I love that about the Midwest. Typically, you've had like this, run of like negative 30 degrees for 3 weeks and like this hardcore freeze. And when it gets to be like 25 degrees and the sun is out, you start seeing all these lumberjacks in their shorts. But you guys didn't really get that. It's going to be like you're out there in your shorts now because you need them, but then you're gonna be back to bitching about the cold here in about 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could even still get snow. Who knows about that? But another thing I was kind of thinking about is we talked about a year ago when we were talking about like kind of New Year's goals and stuff like that, and you were talking about like giving your booth some space to breathe, the work to breathe and whatever. And I remember my response was I always feel the pressure between that kind of like I fight against overcrowding and like having an example in every single kind of color scheme because I'm afraid that somebody is going to like walk because we don't have the color they want or something like that. So that's been one of the things that we want to challenge ourselves to do is perhaps have it be less quantity, more visual impact.
Okay.
So I'm a little nervous about it. I'm nervous about maybe the idea of raising some prices. I mean, how do you know when it's time to raise your prices?
Supply and demand, right? I mean, that's it. But then you got to be careful because you can't bring your prices back down because you don't want somebody to come into your booth and be like, I got a similar thing for like $1,000 more.
I was wondering about that. I mean, I'm talking like a couple $100 bump. Do you think people notice that?
No.
Do you think that's one of those things? That's a safe kind of a entry?
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing.
It's absolutely nothing. No one will ever notice. In fact, raise it $1,000.
Okay. But then I can't go back if if it doesn't work out.
Oh, you're a coward. Just do it.
Just do it. All right. I'm just going to do it.
No, I definitely think I had Bruce Reinfeldt told me that. He's a great photographer and now more of a mixed media guy and good friend, just amazing dude.
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking to him and I was just getting all like, what if I put a $95 on this? And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, that's no difference. Like, if you want to raise your prices, go to the next level. Do the next thing. He's like, you got a $2,000 piece, make it $4,500. And I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, like, he's like, make a big difference. And I don't know that I followed his advice. I don't know that I have the courage, but that was his look on it. Like, I really don't think there's a difference between, nobody's ever going to be like, phew. But I have raised my prices on some of my more intricate pieces that take me a lot longer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think people see it. And then I've talked to another good friend who was like, they used to do by the square inch. And now she was like, I don't know, Will, I just price it.
Price it.
She just writes prices on things. Mm-hmm. And that,
see
that
what
works
happens,
too.
right? If they don't buy it, then you're off a bit.
Yeah.
And we were discussing this with our daughter, this kind of this fear of having fewer pieces. And, she's the psychologist, and she said there's actually a term for it. There's a thing called choice paralysis. Obviously, you probably know what that means. She says that if you give somebody too many choices, they make no choice.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's actually a thing? That's a term? And she said, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah. But I have done different things, like a certain scene, and, there's a framed picture on the wall, and I have, reasons for the framed picture. If somebody came into my booth and were like, if you'd like that picture to be your great Uncle Charlie, I can do it for you. Or if you want Willie Nelson over here, then you can do. And it's like, if you do all of that, then people are like, yeah, oh my God, that's a great idea. Who am I going to put there? Let's go walk around and talk. And they never come back.
They never come back.
Not that I've ever,
right. But if you
painted somebody's Uncle Charlie,
if they see we're turning ourselves into knots for them, maybe it's a little bit of a turnoff.
Oh, for sure. And also, like your daughter says, it's a little bit more of a psychological thing.
Right.
Like it is paralysis.
Right about that same time when I'm having that conversation and we are kind of mulling it around, something else came into my awareness. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember what I saw, but there was a speaker. It was an artist of some kind who had said, being an artist is really about putting yourself out there and being willing to fail. There's something about being gutsy about what we do and about what you make and committing to it that tends to be like, it's not the safe thing. I don't know. There might be something to that is attractive to people.
Sure. I was talking to Clifton Henry about this and about pricing, and he had found something about if you price it by the square inch or something, and your large piece is $6,000 and your medium-sized piece should be $3,000, and you want to move more of your $6,000 pieces, make that price a little closer to your $3,000 piece, and all of a sudden the bigger piece looks less intimidating. So if you bump it up, maybe your medium-sized piece is now $3,800, and you put your large piece down to like $5,500, then it's like, oh, now my $5,500 piece looks really good. Like, what a bargain. I can get this piece that's like twice the size. And then you can kind of toy around with those prices until you find it. I don't do that. I just heard a thing and said a thing. So that's where that goes.
For sure.
But I do kinda.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Totally.
I'm helping an emerging artist. They have been accepted into Cherry Creek's emerging artist program, and I'm full disclosure, it's actually my sister-in-law.
Right. Cool.
She's a very talented artist, has never done any art shows at all, like completely green as far as this goes. Oh. She's done some gallery work, and she's an accomplished artist, but kind of put her, the classic, put her art career on hold to raise her kids, and she's kind of an empty nester now, and in my opinion, just an amazing artist. She's the type of artist, kind of like, say maybe like a Beth Bajorsky, where she only does like something from her heart and her soul and does this piece, and that's the end of it. She's not going to be like, I do a piece and I've sold it, and then I do a variation on it and I sell it because I feel like I'm a bit more of like an illustrator, or a storyteller, where I feel like, well, I could tell this story a little differently, etc. Do you think it's okay to put a higher price tag on something that is going to walk out the door and never exist in this world again?
I do, but I feel like that what we're getting paid for as artists is the concept or the idea. So if she's making something that is a one-off, that is its own unique thing, I think the value goes up because of its one-of-a-kind nature.
So the way my wife looked at it, and she was like, well, if I'm doing a piece of jewelry with a one-of-a-kind gem that you're never going to be able to find again, you could pour through the Tucson Gem Show and never find anything remotely similar. It's a total one-of-a-kind. You get to kind of name your own price on it because it is completely unique. Whereas if you're buying lab-created diamonds and you can get the same carat and the same size and you just go and you get that diamond. I don't know. I thought that was a pretty good analogy that she had.
For sure.
So I don't know. It's just something interesting that I've never really... I mean, I have come across it. My work is one of a kind, but I do revisit compositions, right? Or I do revisit different stories I tell. So, and I think that's fine. I think we all, for the most part, do, or a lot of us do.
I think out there on the art fair scene, yeah.
Or, a lot of people have pretty deep integrity against doing that and only create one image, like, Paige Whitcomb, which she blew me away with her artist statement and the way she creates her work. So, I don't know. It's interesting. We all have different business models, and I kind of love it when we start having these conversations and you're like, you start to consider things. Is, the fact that she can't duplicate it, does it make it more valuable than something that I do that I've established and have a collector's list? And maybe.
I mean, that's a conversation that we've been having over here, Renee and I, because I feel like we're kind of hitting a little bit of a reset moment in our lives and in our career. It feels like overcoming this physical hurdle.
Sure.
Also on top of not having the pressure of having children to support.
Right.
We're now at this point where we can redefine things. And we've been having conversations which are like kind of like from back in the beginning when it was like we were dreaming up this business. It feels like we're dreaming up a whole new thing.
Yeah, and you kind of are, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't have anything that could be tangibly talked about. It just feels exciting. But that question of the more one-off, because I think that is a good way to, first of all, have a different connection to your work. But then it's like it gives you the opportunity, I kind of to step up what you can charge for the work.
Sure,
you know what I mean? Because it is more of a unique one of a kind where you're not going to go into someone else's house and say, well, I have that too.
Right. Yeah. And I think with craft, sometimes you expect it a little bit more or you expect a certain kind of reproduction. But what I find with craft, because I've done both, is that the longer you work at it, obviously, the better you get at it. And if you and Renee start doing something unique and new, I would imagine that you'd want to do it again. And to keep that, it's almost like taking a highway exit. And it's like, well, here's the highway we're on now, and we're going to progress this line until we figure out exactly how to create it. But
it almost feels like we've invented our look. And not that we want to recreate that thing. It feels like we've invented like a series, and we can like have it evolve and be fleshed out piece after piece or installation after installation. But I mean, that's how I think of it with glass anyway.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with people creating work for the first time, The biggest problem that this emerging artist is having is that they really like creating on one size of paper. And so they have like 15 4-foot by 3-foot pieces. And I've suggested, well, how about a different size structure and price structure? That way you can see at what point your consumers want to buy from you. Like I know where my sweet spots are, and I've got $2,000, $4,000, and like $7,000. Like those are my sweet spots. And I know that I can sell those, and I'm lucky enough to be able to sell those, and I know my collectors like that. Well, she doesn't know,
Yeah,
she
that's
didn't
kind
know,
of what you build over time and with experience of interacting and selling.
right. And how do you figure that out if you only want to do, 2 or 3 shows a year from the get-go? Like I remember when we started out, like I was doing 15 to 20.
I guess the way I see it is we all come at this from a different point of view. And it seems like when we're on the street doing art fairs, meeting the public in person, there is that element of commerce that comes in, and we tend to think of our work maybe a little, I don't know, it's hard not to think of it like a product and what's going to sell when we are on the road like that.
Right.
So perhaps where she's at, it's like, this is what I want to make. And you put it out there and you're like, this is it. Take it or leave it. Not going to be like sales tactics of size or whatever. This is truly where she wants to start.
Yeah.
But hey, let's switch topics here. I want to jump into this idea of resets, and what has been just totally getting Renee and I excited in the studio is that there's a completely new season of Blown Away out on Netflix now, which I love. It is so good this season. We are like totally addicted to it. We feel kind of spoiled to have a show like this giving such great exposure to the medium that we work in.
Oh, God, not Blown Away again.
Anyway, I've given up that dream of applying and actually, being on the show, because the reality set in, like, why would I want to embarrass myself in public? On the other hand, why am I embarrassing myself in public right now?
I do it every other week, once a month. Right. I don't know. That's fine. I mean, you get on these reality shows and they edit it the way they want it to do.
Right.
So,
totally.
If you drop one vase that you're blowing and you make a noise, they're going to just repeat it.
Oh, man.
No.
The public goes wild.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you're the oh no guy. Hey, say oh no. And all of a sudden that's cursed you for the rest of your career, and that's all they want to say.
Hey, I wanted to say I saw your wife's post about her beautiful new studio that got finished last week or something, and it looks like an amazing creative space. I'm really excited for her.
Oh, I'm thrilled for her. She's going to make incredible work there. She's been working so hard on getting that and getting the money saved and doing it exactly the way that she wants.
Nice.
And she's so thrilled to get away from the rest of us.
Is it away from the family? It's
absolutely.
Good.
I mean, her studio has been in our house it's 1 story and it's really long.
Uh-huh.
And no, it's not a trailer, but
it's a couple of them.
Yeah, that's right. It's double wide. No, it's a long house, that kind of Adobe style, and you go in and there's a hallway on the right where the bedrooms go down, and you've got the first bedroom on the right is her studio, and then our bedroom, and then we have the 2 kids' rooms. So when people are all in the house, they're all going back and forth past, and the dogs are bothering her. And
oh gosh,
I don't know. It's like she's trying to work on a railroad track. It's just like constant. Every time a train goes by, it's like constant interruptions. So this is one of those spaces, I think, that's going to be like an investment in the work and herself, and not wanting to kill us and throw us out a window. Not to do a little recall there, but nobody's trying to get thrown out a window.
Okay.
So anyway, we're on the ground floor. So sorry, Susie, you can't kick me off the deck. Feed me to the rats.
Well, it made me think about how important is your studio space to like your process. Like for me, we've had this exact same studio for 24 years. With a glass blowing studio, it's like we need the functionality of the equipment. It doesn't need to look good. It just needs to have what we need. We get into kind of like the zone of like muscle memory and how many steps to the bench and how many steps back to the ovens and all this kind of thing. And I was thinking to myself, there are certain artists where how you feel in the space is critical to the artwork you're making.
Yeah, I'm a slob. And I work by myself, and I like to kind of, I don't even know if I like to make a mess, because I've got a little area that I can, it's like a little sitting room that I've made where I can kind of sit and read and take a break. And I love that. And I don't know why the rest of my space isn't, but I could show you pictures. It's just a dump. Like I I like to throw things. Like I grab my paint and I squish it on the thing and I'm making and I'm pushing it around and I've got paint all over my hands and there's paint all over everything. And then I do like a clean space, but typically I work in kind of a mess.
Can't you like work anywhere? I mean, seriously, could you like do the same thing in Minnesota, in the barn in the back, or if you're in a hotel room finishing things up before it, goes out on the road?
Hotel room is tough. Yeah, hotel room is real tough. I've brought pieces along. Actually finished a painting on the road that I'd done all of my line work and had not done any of my, I do my work in very set steps. Yeah. So I really only had the last step to do of kind of the shading and some of that. So I had that to do, and I did it in my booth. Actually, I hung it up on the wall, and it was easier than the hotel. I had time to do that, so I hung it up on the wall and did that. I kind of enjoyed that. I would actually work in my booth if there weren't people. I don't like people.
Yeah.
I don't like people I've always had a hard time somebody looking over my shoulder. Oh. I'm one of those people. I feel the hair on the back of my neck. I'm kind of like, grr.
I've gotten like that too. People are romanced by a glass studio. They want to come and watch and ooh and ah. And initially I liked having them there because they would see the magic and it would make them buyers. They would get romanced by what they were seeing. But as my career has gone on and things become more complicated, I really can get distracted. And the simplest little hesitation or whatever it be, it throws the timing off. And then you've spent all this time on a piece that maybe the customer liked something you made and they're going to buy something that you already have made. But I basically am going to throw away the work that we were working on that day because I'm not proud of it. You know what I'm saying? And that distraction can affect the work. So I get you when you're saying having somebody watch you. It's like, just give me a minute here. I got to fix this and I'm going to change that.
Yeah.
And out of my head,
No, I don't want anybody looking at me pretty much ever. Don't look at me.
That's why it's not a video podcast, everyone.
That's right. Yeah. You're like, hey, I was thinking about putting this on YouTube and doing a video. Oh, I quit. I quit.
Suddenly your Wi-Fi wouldn't work whenever we wanted to do it that way. So very convenient.
It is convenient. But that's the thing with glass too. And it is kind of a performance if you want it to be that. I know at Artisphere, they have the glass blowers going pretty constantly.
Where did you say at Artisphere?
They're showing off. Yeah, in South Carolina, right down on the bridge. They always have a furnace. But then the glass blowers, it's always kind of shocking, but it's almost like a punchline at the end because they've blown this beautiful piece. And then they just tap it right into the trash and it blows up because they don't have an annealing oven.
Oh, look at you.
Bring the temperature back down.
Somebody's been researching his glass blowing equipment. Wow.
Yeah. Let's get on to glory holes. Douglas, how many bad shows do you think you do before you changed your work or quit? How many do you think it would take?
Good question. Not many. I mean, I could maybe do a run of 3. And I think then I'd feel like, okay, something's off here. Something needs to change.
Would you immediately blame yourself or would you blame the work or would you go to be like, those shows suck?
I always blame myself.
Always. Right?
Oh my God, always.
Yeah. I mean, you could do a show in the rain and be like, I suck. And make it, and it, I don't know. I tend to beat myself up. And I mean, The Grove was great. And then I did not have a great show in California, unfortunately. I do not actually blame the show on that one. But that one was tough and I had the best spot in the show. Yeah. And honestly, I just stunk it up and really blame myself. And I kind of was licking my wounds when I came home. I'm like, well, what do I want to create that feels really good to me? And I'm like, this is super hokey, but those hipsters and the farmers markets with their mustaches and their little hats and they're sitting around at the old timey typewriter.
Yeah.
And I asked that guy, I was like, hey, help me get unstuck as an artist. Here's $10, write me a poem. And so he's like, okay, cool. And because I was thinking about him and I'm watching him, and say what you want about those guys. They aren't ever stuck creatively because they're constantly working. and writing new things. And people are coming up with topics. Hey, write me a poem about this, write me a poem about that. And so I paid the hipster and spun the wheel, and he wrote me a poem, and it had this line in there that he said he ripped off of somebody else. He actually wrote that one in red, which I thought was cool. He wrote that line. He's like, now this one was not my line, the rest of it leading up to it. But he's a writer, and he thought I was a writer and had a writer's block.
Oh, gotcha.
And I just let him go for it, and that's fine. But he said, if you can't sit down and write, then stand up and live. And I think that's the key, right?
That's what I've been dealing with. 100%.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were talking about. You got out there, and instead of living, you were cooped up in your little coffin room, having a hard time with your foot. Your wife got out there, and Renee took you out, and you did some living. And,
well, I'll do a little honest talk here. I think that what happened is it happened day after day after day, starting after, I started having problems with my feet.
Right.
And I stopped living. And I started spending a lot of time on this project with the podcast. I spent a lot of times looking at a screen and listening to artists, talking back and forth and having good conversations. It may seem counterintuitive, even though I'm like interacting and talking with other artists. It became very solitary. And I needed to start living, and I needed to stand up and start living. I love that quote. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, we all think of you as bringing the Ernie to my Bert. So I hear you there loud and clear.
So one other thing I wanted to say, when I talked about earlier this year about reassessing like the future and things that are too much or whatever. And I made a decision. I haven't talked about this on the podcast, but I stepped down from the board of NAIA.
Oh, cool.
For anyone who might not know that I made that decision. And it's one of those things where, you were there at that point too, where you feel like, you're a part of a group, then you're really trying to help. And we are doing a good job helping, and the group is doing an awesome work.
They are.
But we need to assess when it's taking too much from us, individually, that it's like, okay, I'm going to pass the baton and somebody else can step in and not feel like I've somehow like I'm letting anyone down or letting the group down, because it's in super capable hands. Those guys are great and they're doing an awesome job, but it was just one of those things that was too much for me. So NAIA is still our sponsor, but neither one of us are on the board of directors anymore.
True. And it's a great group of women and men that are running that thing, and I'm proud of the work that they're doing.
Definitely.
More power to them. Are you still going to be able to get into all the shows that you want to, since they control all the juries?
I'm going to throw caution to the wind.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard,
that
to
is
be
the
honest.
funny. I mean, honestly, for sure.
Yeah. The fact that there's an artist out there that thinks that the NAIA is some kind of Illuminati that is running the shows. No, they're diagnosing all of my words right now and playing them backwards. Paul is dead, ladies and gentlemen, and the NAIA is running the show. A group of nice folks.
That's right. Nice folks who are donating their time and their energy towards, making art festivals better for everybody. So good luck to them, and thanks for everything. But I did want to switch topics and talk a little bit about last night. I had the pleasure of enjoying the Academy Awards, the Oscars.
Yeah.
And my favorite moment of the Academy Awards was when
John Cena got naked?
No.
Oh.
Not that part. But when Robert Downey Jr. steps up and he says, I would like to thank my terrible childhood. But I had this on my mind for a while. I mean, a couple of the guests that we've talked to this year, I've thought about that whole idea of like what makes a creative kid. And I've kind of wondered to myself, does having a kind of a rough upbringing make us more creative? Is that like how we find our way to communicate with the world, is through art and through visual stuff versus words? I don't know. What do you think?
Maybe. I think my mom should have probably beat me more, because I didn't get I wouldn't be so artistically stuck right now. I'd know what to paint. So, no, I don't know. I had a pretty nice childhood, to be honest. Cool. So not to be whatever, but Mark Winter had an amazing childhood. I admire him. And,
right. Good point.
So maybe not.
One of the things that made me think of that was when Lisa and I were talking about how she communicates visually. And she said that art was a way for her to express herself. Now, she didn't say she had a bad childhood. I'm not saying that that's what she said. But it kind of coalesced around some of those things I had been thinking about. And then when Robert Downey Jr. thanked his terrible childhood, it made me think that kind of resurfaced it again.
Yeah, for sure. I think we get there, however we get there. But don't try to make an artist by beating your kids. That's not a good idea. Don't
There you
beat
go.
your
That's an idea.
kids.
Next Picasso.
I'm going to go, you know what? My kids are home now. That's not funny.
Get yourself an artist.
They're already artists. All right. That's not funny. That's how we do. I just lay things up and be like, yep, cut that. Nope, cut that too. Yep, cut that.
And then another thing that I kind of had on our list for a while that I wanted to talk about was, have you had a chance to watch the Netflix documentary about the best night of pop? We Are the World?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
I messaged you about it.
I did watch it. I did.
You did? And your thoughts?
It made me realize what an insufferable little bastard I was. Because I think I hated every single artist that was on the screen that did We Are the World at the time, except for Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
I preferred his earlier work.
I think I remember the first thing you said to me in our first conversation of setting up this podcast. And you said, well, Douglas, some people call me a music snob.
Well, I mean, I've been carrying that a long way. But yeah, I was like, well, at the time, I hated Michael Jackson. I hated Lionel Richie. I hated Quincy Jones and all of his production stuff. I hated all of it. I was such an insufferable little prick. So all that just reminded me of that. But
so that took you back in time.
Yeah, I was
right?
laughing.
It took you back to
but at myself. But I still hate Cyndi Lauper.
Okay, we can't be friends anymore. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Go ahead. Tell us about your little movie.
No, my point about it was, so they had all that footage, the behind the scenes footage. And it wasn't whether I liked the artist or didn't like the artist. It had nothing to do with that. But what was really interesting is, the past number of years, us doing the podcast and talking to some of my heroes, some of my artist heroes out there.
For sure.
And then, some of the revealing talks that they have about maybe an insecurity, maybe how they don't think their work measures up. And you're like, well, if your work doesn't measure up, you know what I mean? How does any of us survive this? And just seeing those moments in that room when the artist didn't know that people were watching, watching Bob Dylan look like...
Oh, that was amazing. I did love that.
He was like looking around, side-eye back and forth, completely feeling out of his element. I mean, he's not like a choir singer, he's a character singer.
Ray Charles goes through and he's explaining the song to Dylan. He's like, well, and they only showed a bit of that. And he's like, you got to wrap your head around it this way. It's actually a blues song. And then he starts playing the piano for Bob Dylan. And he's like, listen, he starts playing it like kind of a blues shuffle. And then Dylan is still kind of like, okay, he's hearing it. And then what I'm sure what you were going to say is that Stevie Wonder, he's a natural mimic. I loved that. And he was like, Bob, you got to sing. It's like, and he just does Bob Dylan for Bob Dylan. And everybody's standing around and he's singing his part. And damned if Dylan didn't go back and imitate Stevie Wonder doing him.
Stevie Wonder doing Bob Dylan doing Stevie whatever.
Yeah. And that's how he got his part out. It was amazing.
It was amazing, but it was surprising to me. Even like there was a moment when Cyndi Lauper was like looking around and feeling, she's probably 19 at the time. And all of these greats are laughing at her. And she's like, come on, guys, stop it. They were like these insecure artists. And it's like, it is true to be creative and to put ourselves out there. There is this kind of inferiority complex or something that we all have.
Yeah, they got Huey Lewis in there because they couldn't get Prince.
That was amazing. Yeah.
And at the time, Huey Lewis had like 7 hits in a row off of sports. But just crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, I enjoyed that. And anyone who hasn't seen it, they might like to see that kind of aspect of the behind the scenes.
Or if you're a total music snob like me, that bit with the Dylan, it's at the 38-minute mark. So you can just fast forward, watch there. Just get right to it. And then you turn it off. You don't have to see Cyndi Lauper.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Man, it was really nice to catch up with some folks here on the road, and it had been a while. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, it was nice to catch up with Daryl Thetford and Cindy Holmes and a lot of the people that we've had on the show, the guests, and see lots of folks. I'm name dropping people that you know, but does that count?
Yeah, but I mean, that does a lot for our mood and our whatever. We all enjoy being home and being around our family and stuff, but, seeing the community out at a show, it really does wonders, I think, to get out there and to get around people.
It does. It does. Kind of. I don't know. I've become even more weird and introverted. If I'm having a bad show, I don't want to see anybody.
Right. Yeah.
That I'm just
don't look at me.
Yeah, don't look at do not
Don't
see.
ask me how I'm doing because I have to do a really hyper big smile.
Oh, gross. Did you ever see that the old Dracula? Not old, but like 80s old.
No, I did not.
Gary Oldman playing Dracula, and there's a scene where he turns into the monster, and he's sitting there and he's eating this maiden, and somebody walks past him, and he looks up and he goes, "Do not see me." And my wife and I say that to each other all the time. It's just like I'm doing the thing. I'm the monster. Do not see me. So that's kind of how I feel at a bad show. I don't want to have dinner. I don't want to see you. I don't want to. It's not that I don't want to see you. I don't want you to see me.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that.
That's a great analogy because it is totally true.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. It kind of seems like we're wrapping things up here. What do you think?
I have literally nothing else to say to these people.
Okay, perfect. Well, before we go, if you will indulge me, I would like to send out a special happy birthday wish to my wife and fellow artist in this art fair community. It's a very special one this year. And so if everybody could join me and send a little light and love her way, that would be fantastic.
Here it goes. I did it. I did it. Yep. All right.
Yeah. So there's that. And on top of that, I also want to send a shout out to a great artist. Her name is Audrey Young from Audrey Modern. She makes these really great felt and leather pieces, craft artist from the Northwest. Anyway, her work was the perfect gift for my wife this year. So I want to thank Audrey for her beautiful work. It made for the perfect gift for Renee. And I hope you had a great show at ACC this past week.
Very nice. Happy birthday, Renee. You mean a lot to us here on the show, obviously. And then, that's all I got. That's. I told you I didn't have anything. Yeah, see?
All right.
God, the last 2 weeks have just been awful. That Miami to California thing, it's like the 3-hour difference has given me jet lag and just completely disrupted the pattern. So like being out in California, and I don't even know how to sleep anymore. I'll go to bed at 9 and wake up at 1, like that bad. Yeah. And I'm like, it's 1. What am I going to do at 1?
Right.
Well,
it looks like we've got a new time for recording the podcast. So there you go.
Oh, I'll be a delight at 1 o'clock. You want to have a show? That'll be a different show. Here's another person I hate.
Speaking of not getting much sleep, I am actually ready to call this one a day. So why don't we wrap this conversation, sir?
Thank God.
Yes.
All right, brother. I'll see you soon. We'll have another interview for you folks coming up shortly. We have some exciting things planned here for the spring, and thanks again for listening. Drop us a review if you are so inclined on your favorite podcast listening streaming crap, and we'll see you next time.
All right, take care, everyone.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.